So standard ACLs, or our access control list, are very basic ways to control access in and outbound from our routers. There's also extended ACLs, and with the extended ACLs we can filter on things such as our source address, our destination address, the protocols that we're using, and the port numbers that are using. So we have a little bit more precise traffic filtering control with our IPv4 ACLs when we use an extended ACL. With our extended ACLs, it can actually do such things as simultaneously allow email traffic from a network to a specific destination while also denying file transfer and web browsing. So our extended ACLs really do let us do a bit more on controlling that flow, and also by controlling the flow we're controlling our security as well. Now with this extended control, the example here is showing us that we can narrow things down actually to port numbers. We can specify by configuring either the port number or the name of a well-known port. So it can either be port 23 or we would tell it telnet. They're interchangeable there. So the examples that are shown here shows that the administrator specifies a TCP or UDP port number by placing it at the end of the extended ACL statement. And these examples we're using TCP ports, and we're giving it a network range, and we're telling it that that network range is permitted with anything that is equal to 23, or if we're giving it a name that is equal to telnet. So you say access list, you give your access list number, you either permit or deny, you can say TCP or UDP, and then you give it the information that it needs. If we do the TCP any equals with a question mark, you'll see a long list of information for the different port numbers that are available for you to grant access to or deny access to. So you can control things down to a finite point. So this is what you are going to start looking at. Remember, you can always use your question mark, and your port number can either be equal to the port number, or you may tell it you want it that it's not equal to that port number, so everything but that port number. You may want a range, so anything that's greater than a certain port number or less than a certain port number is one of the ways you can limit the access as well. With your extended ACLs, you're going to create them the same as you did with your standard ACLs. You'll create the extended ACL, configure it first, and then you'll activate it on a particular interface. Now the command syntax and the parameters are more complex with your extended because you're putting more information in there, but you're still going to follow the same basic logic in applying your information. Now one of the things that you need to make sure that you get in the habit of doing, it just makes life easier for you, is when you create your access list, then you also need to do the deny. If you're denying access to the conditions aren't matched, you can permit, and it permits access if the conditions are matched. But you also need to get in the habit of doing this remark statement, and it's used to enter your remark or your comment a lot like in programming, so that you're letting yourself, in case you've forgotten what it is you've created this for, or you're letting those who are looking at your information who wasn't in the process of creating your access control list, so they know what it is that you're attempting to do. So with that said, you'll notice here we have two different access lists, and here on access list 103 we're permitting TCP type packets on these particular networks, and we're saying anything that's equal to 80, which is HTTP traffic, and anything that's equal to 443, which is the HTTPS. And then access list 104 is going to permit TCP of anything on the 192.168.10.0, and that's established. So it allows established HTTP and HTTPS replies. Now this example is showing where we've set up the two access lists, and once you have selected and created your access list, remember you have to apply them to an interface. So here we're going to apply these to the gigabit interface here on router 1. And access list 103, which is the IP access group 103, we're allowing that for inbound traffic. And then the IP access group 104 is designated for outbound traffic. Remember that your access control list can either come in or go out. It doesn't do both at the same time. The example here is showing how we can use the deny statements in the extended ACL to deny FTP traffic. And remember our implicit deny statements. So if we're wanting to deny TCP for 23 here, which I believe was Telnet, but we want everything else to be able to work on our network, we need to make sure that we do permit IP any. That way that implied deny statement doesn't take effect, because if we had the deny TCP any for that network that's equal to the Telnet port, then we wouldn't have any traffic traveling at all, because then we would have an implied deny any statement following that. So you need to make sure when you're denying ports that you also allow the ports out that you need to have come out or come in. Now, just like with our standard ACLs, our extended ACLs can have names, and when you create these, you're going to be in global config mode, and you'll type in IP access list. Now, since we're doing extended, you have to say extended, whereas when we were doing standard at this point, we would have placed standard. So it's IP access list extended, and then give it the name of that list. Remember, you do it in uppercase. It makes it easier for you to identify later. So this example here is giving IP access list extended surfing. Okay, so it's going to let us get out on the web. We're going to surf the web. And then once you go into this mode, you'll notice that your configuration mode now says config extended named ACL. And from this point on, you just have to put your permit and your deny statements. Exit it. And then you're going to have to apply that to your interface. And instead of giving it a group number, you give the group name. So really it's how the network administrator prefers to work, if they prefer working with numbers or they prefer working with names. Personally, I like using the names because it can help me remember what it is I've created that ACL to do. I find it easier to locate because I don't have to remember what number did I use for that particular control list. So it's really up to you, except for during exercises, how you create your networks and how you create your access control list as well. Make sure you get in the habit of using the show access list to verify that you have created your access list to do what you think they're going to do, and then also do your show IP with the interface to make sure that you've assigned the correct access list to the outgoing and the inbound traffic. So those are the two places you can go to verify what you thought you've created was actually created.